So I'm going to do something from the Parsha, but a very interesting piece from the Parsha. Tazria, it's a double portion, Tazria Metzera, speaking about the laws of leprosy. And it's not modern day leprosy, but it is a disease. I don't know if disease is the right term, but an infliction. I wouldn't call it even a disease. I would call it an infliction, not a disease. That came from speaking ill. The truth is, the real truth is, all disease is ultimately a spiritual affliction. What do I mean? So think about it. If everything in the physical world has a counterpart in the spiritual, so anything that happens in the physical world has to evolve from the spiritual. So if there's an affliction, a disease, or anything, ultimately it's an affliction of the soul, because that's where it evolves from. You know, the physical is not a reality of its own, onto its own. Actually, I was listening to something pretty amazing that I have to listen more to from a doctor, a scientist, speaking about a new theory that a scientist has of how everything is a form of communication. And it's from a scientific perspective or awareness, consciousness and awareness, everything in the physical world. And because I want to go, the point being that whatever happens in the physical world is really coming from a higher place. It evolves into the physical from the spiritual. And we are so disconnected that we don't recognize that. That's why the law of leprosy that is in the Torah does not exist today, is because the physical world is not the same kind of reflection or open reflection as it was back in the day. So back in the day, if you spoke ill, you may get this kind of leprosy, a skin disease. It's only skin deep, but it made you impure as a result of having it. And there's a whole process here, which we're not going to go into all the details here, because we're just going to go into one instance, one discussion about this. Let me get that in front of us so we can learn this together. So this is a piece of the Talmud. So Talmud tells us a heavenly academy. This is in Baba Metzia. Baba Metzia, the middle gate, it's on page 86, the first daf. Is that easier to read now? Okay. The heavenly academy were disagreeing with regard to the halacha of leprosy. In general, leprosy spot includes two signs of impurity, a bright white spot and a white hair. The basic halacha is that if the snow white lepers sore, baheris, preceded the white hair, then the afflicted person is ritually impure. Excuse me. It's spring here. It's sprung on us, spring over here. And I have some spring allergies. So the nice weather comes with its challenges for me. Okay, so again, if the snow white leprous sore preceded the white hair came after, then the afflicted person is ritually impure. But if the white hair came first, it preceded the beheris, right? This snow white leprous sore, then the person's pure. Okay? Now, a heavenly debate concerned a case of uncertainty. What does a heavenly debate means? Above, not down here. The heavens above, right? Gan Eden, or wherever. The Sifta Deraki, as it's called, the heavenly yeshiva. So, what's the debate? Of uncertainty, as which came first, the spot or the hair. So what happens if you don't know what came first, the white hair or the blemish, the spot, right? If the spot came first and then the white hair, you're impure. But if the white hair came first and then the spot, then you're impure in the first case. In this case, you'd be pure. Well, you don't know. So the Holy One, blessed be He, how do we say that in Hebrew? He's called a Kodesh Baruch Hu. He says that the individual is pure. But every other member of the Heavenly Academy, what they're called the Mesifta Derikia, the Heavenly Academy says he is impure. And they said, who can arbitrate this dispute? You got a dispute, two sides. You need an arbitrator, obviously, right? Makes sense. You need a third opinion. So they agreed that Rabba Bar Nachmani should arbitrate. As Rabbi Bar Nachmani once said, why should he be the arbitrator? I'm single in the halachas of leprosy and single in the halachas of ritual impurity imparted by tents. Oy halim. They sent a messenger from heaven. You know who that messenger is? The angel of death, because he's alive. All right, of heaven, after him to take his soul up to the heavenly academy. But the angel of death was unable to approach Rabbi Bar Nachmani. Why? As his mouth did not cease from his Torah study. He was learning. He didn't stop. Rabbi Bar Nachmani, in the meantime, a wind blew and howled between the branches. Rabbi Bar Nachmani thought the noise was due to the infantry battalion about to capture him. He said, let that man, meaning me, die and not be given over to the hands of the government. The angel of death was therefore able to take his soul, and he was dying. He said in response to dispute in heaven, it is pure, it is pure. A divine voice emerged from heaven and said, happy are you, Rabbi Bar Nachmani, as your body is pure and you left this soul, your soul left this world pure. Did you ever hear such a story? No. Tim, you ever heard such a story? Welcome, Tim. What a story. The Talmud. So the first thing we need to understand, two Jews, three opinions, I get. But in heaven, they also argue. I thought the arguments would finish at one point. They continue. Not only they continue, but it doesn't make sense. How do you argue against HaKadosh Baruch Hu? The Holy One, blessed be He. What's going on over here? And furthermore, we need to understand is who's making the hachra, who's adjudicating the law? Some human down here that has to be taken up there in order to adjudicate the law. What does that mean? And how is he possibly capable of doing that? I mean, he's going to decide whether HaKadosh Baruch Hu is correct, the Holy One, blessed be He, is correct or not. So the whole thing is, pretty wild, to say the least. Any questions before we move on? You have any other issues here that need clarification? Okay. Sorry, someone? No, we're good? Okay. So this is a Sicha from the Rebbe. The Rebbe explains as follows. So when it comes to what we call the third opinion, which is the decisive one who is welcome David, welcome Clem. The third opinion, which is the opinion that will weigh one side or the other. So the Rebbe explains that the third opinion is not really deciding over one side or the other, right? In this case, pure or impure. It's a third opinion that really is encompassing of the other two opinions. And that's the idea we have of chesed on the right, gvura on the left, right? We have kindness on the right. We have gvura, judgment, power, restraint on the left. And compassion is the middle that really is a combination of both kindness and judgment. How is it a combination of kindness and judgment? Is because kindness, the concept of kindness that we're talking about over here, means indiscriminate giving. In other words, you're giving because you want to give, right? If you're giving because someone is deserved, then that's not kindness. Then that's, you owe it, right? That's a judgment, right? You work 2 hours and we made up, you're going to get $25 an hour. So here's the $50. Am I being kind, giving you the money? No. I'm doing that, which is the judgment that was made, right? That's left side. So what happens if you work we made up, you're going to work 2 hours, but you loafed off and you really didn't do the job? Then you didn't do the work, so then you don't get paid. That's the judgment on the left. The right side, kindness, would say, here, indiscriminate giving, I'm giving it to you. I'm not even taking consideration whether you deserve it, don't deserve it. I'm just giving. You know what? I'm just in a good mood. It's my birthday today. So yeah, here, take the money. Indiscriminate giving, right? Sometimes we need to be indiscriminate in our giving, and sometimes we have to be very discriminating. That's the difference between the two. What is compassion? Compassion is a mixture of the two things that come together. What does that mean? Well, you're being discriminating, because compassion means that the person doesn't deserve to get, but yet you give out of compassion. So it's a mixture of the two. There's a judgment, but yet there's a giving. That's what compassion is. And that's why it's the middle, because it is a combination of chesed and gvura, indiscriminate giving, and judgment. Does that make sense? So compassion is really, is compassion like going with the side of kindness? Yes and no. Is it going with the side of gvura? Yes and no. It's including an element of both, right? Of both of them. Therefore, that's why it's a third opinion, because it is enveloped, it is greater than the two, therefore able to incorporate elements of the two. Does that make sense? Yeah? Clear? Wonderful. Beautiful. So when Rabbi Bar Nachmani gave his opinion, he said tahar, tahar. So it would seem that he's siding with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu said in the opinion, in the instance when there is a doubt of whether this is a case of leprosy or not, right? That's our discussion over here. There's a question in the heavenly court. If there's a doubt about a sign of leprosy, which came first, and therefore if it is indeed leprosy or it's not leprosy, we have a debate. So he said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, said, when in doubt, pure. The Mesivta Derakia, the Heavenly Academy, right? All of the Heavenly Academy disagreed with God, with the Holy One, blessed be He, and said, impure. Now Rabbi Bar Nachmani comes, he's not siding with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though he's saying tahar, pure, but we will see later on what that means. He is a third opinion that is able to incorporate the other two opinions. Is that clear? Anybody, any question on that? Anybody? Before we go further, I want to make sure that there's clarity on that. Just like to, we have a few new people that came. David, Clem, Vilma, Hannah. Welcome to all of you. So that's clear, yeah? All right, please, if there isn't clarity, speak up. Okay. So our original question is, how could there be an argument in heaven against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He? Right? What does it mean to argue against, seemingly arguing against God? What does that mean exactly? So this is a concept that we've learned before, that a name of God is a reference to a certain element of divine light, of divine aspects of God. Just as God there's divine kindness and divine chesed and gvura, divine wisdom, and so on and so forth. Those are all elements of the expression of God. Likewise, the names of God are an expression of Him. They're divine expressions. So here we have two divine expressions that are embodied in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, in that name. And then we have another one in the heavenly yeshiva, the heavenly academy, right? And then finally, we have also an expression of God that's expressed in who? Rabbi Bar Nachmani, who is the third opinion that there's something about him in his expression of God that he incorporates that is encompassing of the other two. Okay, that's where we're going. I'm just giving you the structure. I'm building the outs, the structure of the building, and then we're going to put the bricks and fill up the entire structure. Okay, so let's understand. There's an aspect of God. For those who learn Tanya, have an idea of this. There's an aspect of God that we call Soivev Kol Almin, the encompassing light of God. What does that mean, encompassing? Means it is God that is beyond the world, that it is not defined by anything of this world. He encompasses everything of this world. Equally, all of creation. Soivev Kol Almin. That is the name HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He. Why? Because the word Kadosh means removed. We translate it as holy, but holy means removed, not imminent. There is not an imminence, but removed. Okay? Transcendent. That's the transcendence of God. Then there's something called Mamali Kol Amin, the way God is found within every nook and cranny of creation. How God is found in a tissue, uniquely different, as He animates this differently than He animates the pen, me, a tree, animals. Everything has its unique imprint of the divine. That's the immanence of God within this world. And that's something that we can grasp because it's within our grasp to appreciate that. That is reflected by the Heavenly Academy. Because what's an academy? A place of learning. What's a place of learning? Comprehension, understanding. Transcendence of God is beyond our comprehension. That's a light of God that encompasses everything in an equal, it's sort of in an equal manner of creation, animal, human, everything in an equal manner. But then there is the immanence of God that is reflected in creation. Excuse me. because it is every part of the nuance of everything in creation. And that's something that we can grasp. And that's what a yeshiva is. A Talmudic yeshiva, we have my yeshiva every day, Mondays through Fridays from 12 to 1:30. Come and join us. Right? And that's what we're doing now. We're learning. We're on this. What are we doing? I'm not giving you something that's like, an experience that is transcendent, because then that would not be a learning exchange. That's the transcendence. Sometimes you have an experience that transcends your intelligence. It's wow, right? Beyond. We spoke about that in Tanya today, right? About the awesomeness of the presence of God. So, when you're standing before a holy individual, you can sense that of the awesomeness and someone who is transcendent, way beyond you. And then there is from within that we can comprehend. So the yeshiva is a place of learning, okay? Now comes, so let's now put this into place. A world, now these are all different levels of the presence of God, or the manifestation of godliness in the creative, in creation. So the world that is soivev, all-encompassing. What is the natural state of that world? That's a transcendence of this world, of all worlds, not just this physical world, but of all worlds. The natural state of that world is godliness. There's nothing else but God on that level, right? Nothing else but God. On that dimension, if you have a doubt of if on that plane of existence, right? Let's understand it as of a plane of existence. On that plane of existence, if there's a doubt, if there's something not pure and holy there, you go back and fall on the default. What's the default of that world? Purity. Because it's transcendent of worlds of creation. What does that mean, transcendent world and creation? Creation means what? Separation, right? We're talking about leprosy over here. If there's a question of there's a leprosy, in other words, impurity, meaning, what does impurity mean? Separateness from God. As we mentioned at the beginning of the class, the only reason that there can be physical disease is because there is a spiritual disease that where it evolves from. The spiritual disease is the idea of separation from God. In that separateness, right? Very simple. I must tell you that sometimes I eat too much, even though I'm thin, but whatever. I sometimes eat too much. And you know why I do that? Because in that moment, there's a separateness between me and God. Because if there was a true sense of connection to God and presence of God, you wouldn't overeat. You wouldn't do it. We wouldn't do it. But we are who we are, right? So in the world of Soiviv, if I was in the world of Soiviv, that light of God that was all encompassing, so then the natural default in that world is purity. The natural default in that world is connection, because you're absorbed in your source. That's what Soiviv, all encompassing. It's like, that's the concept of the talus that covers us. It is a reflection of Soiviv. That's why talus, by the way, if it's just like that, yay big, it's not kosher, because it's got to encompass most of your body. Not all of it, but most of your body. It's got to be a proper size, because it represents the encompassing light that is now encompassing us, right? In representing that level of being in the world of Soiviv. So in that world, where it's a pure world, it transcends this world, or all creations that are, by definition, creation means Separation. I have my own identity. I am. The very fact that I am is suggesting separation, right? But in the world of Soivev, there is very little I am, because you're encompassed in this, like you're like the ray of light, in the sun. You're incorporated in there. So if there's for sure impurity in that world, in that plane of existence, so it's impure. But if it's a doubt of impurity, then you fall back on the what? On the default. What's the default of Soivev? Purity. So what does the Kodesh Baruch Hu say? Pure. Right? The Sifta, the Rekia, that represents godliness the way it is in the world. The immanence of God, the way God is found unique in this, giving vitality to this tissue, giving vitality to this phone, giving vitality to everything in its unique manner of vegetation and animal and human and so on in its unique manner. That's godliness in the world. What is the nature of this world? Is separation, not connected, right? Not pure. The natural defunct the default of this world is impure. So you need to have a certainty. What does impure mean? Disconnected. Disconnected. That's the natural default of this world. Even though God's giving it vitality, but that it's so concealed, the light, so reduced, that the natural default is a disconnect. And therefore the natural default of this world is impure. So the Kula, Misifta Rakia, the entire Heavenly Academy, what's the Heavenly Academy represent? What form of godliness? Not transcendent, because an academy of learning is a place of comprehension, understanding, incorporating, and bringing it in, digesting it. That's God, as He is, so to speak, invested in everything of creation. So when you know for sure that first came the white hair and then came the blotch on your skin, well, then you're pure. But if it came the other way, you're impure. If you're in doubt, then what do? You have to go back on the default of that plane of existence, on that world. What is the godliness of the created world? Impure, disconnected. And therefore, by default, we have to say, Tameh, impure. Is that clear? Yeah? Cecilia, you got it? Thumbs up? Everybody, give me a thumbs up. A virtual, a real. I know you're... all right, beautiful.
Actually, Rabbi, I am not so sure that I got it.
So again, remember, we're talking about two planes of existence. Transcendence and immanence. The way God is transcendent, the way godliness is immanent. They're different realities. They're different ways that God creates. He creates in a manner of transcendence. A flow of divinity comes from him in a manner of transcendence and in a manner of immanence from within. The transcendence is a world that's beyond creation, a world that is enveloped, so to speak, in that divine level, and therefore that world is a pure world. So when there's a doubt, you go with the default purity. But then there's godliness that is in this world, and that is represented by Kodesh Baruch Hu, and that was the opinion of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Then there's godliness the way it is immanent, that it is not transcendent, but from within the world, how it animates the divinity, how it animates everything uniquely different, one thing from another. That's the godliness in this world that we can comprehend. We can have more of a comprehension of that form of godliness. That is represented by the heavenly yeshiva, and that being that is this world is by default is a disconnection from God by the fact that we feel our own identity, our own selfhood, conscious awareness of self. That of course leads us to wanting for self and desiring, and so all those things that come with that. But that's already not even talking about how we can go astray in such a way in that kind of world. Not even talking about that. Talking about just the nature of the world is a disconnect, and therefore the default of this world is impure, meaning disconnected from God. That's what impurity means, right? Therefore, when you have a doubt, you have to go with the default. So in this world, it's impure. In the world of Soivev, encompassing light of God, where that's beyond, transcends this world, there is purity, and that's where the argument is. So they're not, in fact, you can't say it's they're arguing different realities. They're expressing sort of different realities.
Thank you. I
So
got
now, got it? Okay, great. So now we need to come to some kind of conclusion to this debate, right? So who's going to decide it? It's going to be Rabbah Bar Nachmani. By the way, this is the Rabbah in chapter 1 of Tanya, right? That said, like me, I'm a Beinani, right? If you remember in chapter 1 of Tanya. And what was in the end, why was it that he thought he was a Beinani? Because he always was studying, he was always learning, he never ceased. And therefore, he really didn't know where he was at inside of himself, because he just didn't stop being engaged to know the inner workings of his inside, of his heart. Did he transform his heart or not? But that's a different story. Okay. So now, Rabbah Bar Nachmani, why was he chosen? Because he is Yochid b'negoyim, Yochid b'ayhalais. He is one in singular when it comes to these laws. And the word is Yochid. So the Rebbe explains, his neshama, his soul, is loftier than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That he can be the adjudicator, not just the adjudicator, but the one who brings the two together and he's greater than them in his soul. Now remember, when we say HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the problem that we have, we always think HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I mean, it's God. What's greater than God? It's a name of God. Remember that. When we speak about the essence of God, it's beyond name. This is a name. And let's explain. Let's explain. When we say something is transcendent of something, so it's transcendent of it, but yet it is relative to it. You can only transcend something if you're relative to it, right? Does that make sense? I mean, it's simple logic, right? Simple logic. Transcendence means you're transcendent of something, right? You're not transcendent of nothing. You're transcendent of something. So Soivev, the encompassing light of God that is represented in the name HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is that part of God that encompasses, is beyond something, the world. That means it's relative to the world. So when we speak about God, right, godliness, that's not the essence of God. The essence of God, you can't even say that he's beyond. Oh yeah, God's beyond that. God's beyond logic. Ultimately, you can't even say that. Because that means beyond means he's relative to it. Can't even say that he's relative to it. He has no relatives. He's not a relative to it. That's the essence of God when we speak about atzmos umohos of God. Right? So now we have a third tier, a higher one, representing the essence of God. Rabbi Bar Nachmani, his neshama, that's where our neshamas all come from. But his neshama was a true reflection of it. He lived it. He lived it. Now, we all have it, but we don't express it. He lived it. And that's why the term is used. He's one in singular, Yachid. So let's explain. We say the Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hashem is one. But one can mean that there is another. Echad, meaning God is not Yachid, one in singular and only. In other words, there's another reality. Echad means there's one, but there's two. And the word Echad is Aleph, the oneness of God, Ches, 7 spiritual worlds, and a physical world is 8, and Daled, the 4 directions. In other words, it's the oneness of God, the way God is encompassing. That's the reference, the encompassing light of God. But the essence of God is beyond that. That's Yachid, one and singular and only, beyond. Sorry, can't even say beyond. Right? Transcendent means you're transcendent of something. Beyond, you're beyond something. That's a level that's connected to the essence. Rabbi Bar Nachmani was an embodiment of it in his neshama. As we are, but we don't live it. As a Rebbe is, but that's a Rebbe. And therefore, he had the power to adjudicate this law. That's why they had to, can you imagine they had to come down here to get him? Like, it sounds wild. Like, it's wild. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a transcendent light of God, but is not the essence of God. In Rabbi Bar Nachmani, the Jew, he is the embodiment of the essence of God. And therefore, he's the one who adjudicates. Now, what does he say? Does he side with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Well, you might think so, because he says Tahar, he says pure. No. He says pure, pure. Why does he say twice pure? Pure on the level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, the encompassing transcendent light, right? And pure also on the level of the immanent light of God, the immanent energy of God within creation, which is embodied by the Mesivta of the Heavenly Academy. What does that mean? So how's that not siding with? No, because he's bringing a new element. Because the essence of everything is pure. He reflects the essence of the divine, and therefore he's not speaking about the purity the way it is on the level of transcendent light of God, because that purity is not essential purity. It's a dependent purity on being transcendent. The immanent light of God found in creation. So again, as we said, the default of creation is disconnect because God is concealed. He's concealed. But in the essence of creation is pure. And therefore, from that perspective of seeing the essence of everything, Rabbi Bar Nachmani incorporates both of them, right? and a more essential level, and therefore dictates that pure, because essentially the light of God and the presence of God in everything within creation is but pure, but good. And therefore he's the only one who could ultimately adjudicate that law. Did I lose you all? Are you with me? Was that that was a wild story?
Deeply philosophical.
Deeply, exactly. Deeply philosophical. Yep, absolutely.
So question, Rabbi Fine. So did,
That's Malka.
okay.
Go ahead.
So did he have the same perspective of pure, that the essence, that in Hashem's essence, or did Hashem's essence have impure? Hashem's essence would have impure, right?
No,
No. So
doesn't have impure, only pure. That's why
so
it's Tohar. He says pure, because it's a different kind of purity. It's a purity that comes from the essence, as opposed to the purity that comes from being transcendent. Let me bring this, in a metaphor of human existence, okay? Sometimes you are like you're in a different, your head is in a different space. You kind of transcend all the pettiness of life, right? And you're in a transcendent mode, and there's bickering going on between a couple of people, let's say, right? And you're just above it. You're just above it. And you just don't even relate to it, right? Because you're beyond it. So that's good, but it's also not, that's transcendence. Transcendence is good, but it's not perfectly good. You know why? Because you can't relate to the bickering. That's not good. Meaning because you're beyond it. Now, there's one thing for you to be beyond it, but and that you don't bicker, but that doesn't mean that you don't get it and understand it, and maybe actually see, instead of the bickering, that there's a purity here. When you can touch the essence of your own being, then you'll be able to perceive, right? Even though you might be transcendent, but no, you're not transcendent. You touch the core essence of your being, then you'll be able to touch the core essence of another person's being, that even in the moment of the bickering, you can say pure. And that doesn't mean that doesn't mean they don't have work to do on their own. I'm talking about how you're perceiving it. We're not saying that, oh, therefore they're hunky dory and they don't. I'm talking about how you can perceive it. You can perceive it because of being in touch with your essence, that therefore you can see their essence, and that essence is pure, period. Right?
okay,
Is
I understand.
that clear?
Yes, I understand that, but my question is then, why did the angel of death have to come for him, if he had the same, the same ruling as the essence of Hashem would have?
Well, because it had to be expressed, and he's the one who could express it. Right?
But,
He's the one who had the power to do it. He's the one who had that. He lived the essence of God in his soul, in his life, and therefore he had the capacity to then adjudicate this. Now, obviously, listen, his purpose in time had come. It's that part of the story maybe we're not told, right? So obviously that his time had come, and for whatever reason, I I don't know, but for sure that's the case, right?
okay, so his time having come for his physical death had nothing to do with him adjudicating.
Well, I think the truth is, I have to look a little more into this. You're asking good questions, Sarah Malka, that I don't have a complete handle on it. It's a good question. Let me look a little more into this. You know, in other words, he couldn't, for whatever reason, and I'm not clear on that, he couldn't adjudicate it here, but I guess because it's an argument up there. Now, why would a good man have to be taken up there to adjudicate an argument over there? Only God knows, right? That I can't answer you. Only God knows. But the adjudication of it had to take place over there because that's where the argument was. It wasn't down here. You know, well, why take away such a holy person from us down here? Oh, you know, God seems to be doing that. You know, he does that from time to time.
Okay.
But, you know, that I, you know, but it needed to be dealt with up there, so to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good question. Any other questions? Any other comments? Any other thoughts? Powerful idea. But you know, there's so many things that come out of from here. First of all, you know, when we hear a name, when we hear about God, right? So right away, you know, oh, it's God. You know, you have to understand what we're talking about. What aspect of God are we talking about? You know, in a child's mind, there's just God. When you learn more Torah and you learn more Chassidus, and you understand, obviously, in the end, there's only but God, obviously. But, you know, just like there's, you know, different kinds of expressions that I have, one of kindness, one of wisdom, one of compassion, you know, one of humility, and so on and so forth. So the reason why we have that is because we're created in the divine image, and God has that. So when he's expressing something, it's an expression of maybe the essence, maybe encompassing light, soivev, as it's called in Hebrew, or maybe mamale, the way that God fills the world, which is another form of, you know, the three basic expressions. So that the way God fills the world, just as the soul fills the body. So by me knowing the interplay between the soul and the body, I can understand the interplay of God within the world and creation. Then there is God that is transcendent, but transcendence means transcendence of something, of creation, right? That can't be the essence of God. God doesn't merely transcend creation, right? Then there is, as there is no world, there's nothing, no existence but him. So that is reflected, and it ties in with today's Tanya, that there's a lower level of fear and the higher level of fear. I forgot to give this over in the class today. Maybe I'll give it over now. You know, there's two ways I could look at my hand. I could look at my hand as it's a, you know, it's a hand that can reach out to someone, can give tzedakah, can do can do a lot of good things. It can throw a baseball. It can do a lot of things, right? The greatest end, but ultimately, really, it's to do good. That's what I have a hand, right? But a hand is a hand. Or I could look at my hand differently. God had a desire for the mitzvah of tzedakah. Give that one example, right? Well, the only way he could have tzedakah being done is that if he creates a world, and in that world creates us with a hand that we could extend and give to another. So is a hand a hand? No, it's not a hand. It's the desire of God. It's the desire of God that there should be tzedakah. So the hand is no hand. All it is the desire of God that brings it into being in order that a mitzvah should be done. Tzedakah, or any mitzvah. Just giving that by way of example. The higher level of bittul, of self-effacement, is that I am not. I'm not. There's only but God. Holy, righteous people, they don't have the self-awareness that I am. We have, I am. I have an arm. The best thing I can do with my arm is to reach out to another and help another. That's the ultimate. But my arm's an arm. So I nullified, I've subjugated my arm to something greater, right? But this other way is like, no, there's no arm. No sense of arm. There's only a sense of the will of God. And this is just the extension of fulfilling the will of God. That's holy, righteous people, way eons beyond us, who express the essence of God. Now we have that in our soul. We are eons beyond, far from that. We are BITs, I hope, Bainani in training, right? That's what we hope for, or at least from Tanya perspective, right? But that we should at least recognize that the best thing I could do with my arm is a mitzvah. But that lack of self-awareness, you see, self-awareness means I am, but I'm a servant of God. And therefore, I'm going to use my hand and, for that purpose. And only that purpose. I'm going to raise my hand to hurt somebody. I'm not going to, anything but good. This other level is there's really no sense of self-awareness. All there is a reality of the connectiveness to God. That is imbued in every fiber of their being. So much so that holy righteous tzaddikim, a rebbe, literally a movement like this pushes away things that we have, untold things of negativity. Literally just, it's nothing. How could that be? Because they're just a conduit, a complete reflection of the divine. So merely like that. Seen it. As a Rebbe, like what doctors say, the person had this disease, and the Rebbe, they didn't find anything afterwards. I have no understanding how that. The only understanding, as I'm explaining, is that when you are just a complete, bittul b'mitzias, as it's called, here is nothing else but a reflection of the divine. And in that sense, not even a self-awareness. I have this power. No. When the Rebbe would give dollars, and then people would say, Rebbe, I need your blessing. And the Rebbe would say, Hashem's blessing, In other words, all he was is just the conduit. A very different kind of reality. So that is Rabbi Bar Nachmani. That's who he is. That's his capacity, which is, therefore, he's the one who could be the adjudicator of this issue. Any questions? We're good, we're clear. David, welcome. Thank you for joining. Clem, what time is it in Brisbane?
It is 9:28 in the morning.
It is what time?
9:28.
9:20 in the morning. Oh, okay. So it's right. Okay. So you're after.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Good. Usually we keep you up.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining. Everybody else, we're good. All right. Hannah, welcome. And Vilma, thank you for joining. Esther, Liba, and Robert, Davida, Joel, Art, Tim, Andrew, Sarah Malka, and Larry, Trimad, and Celia. All right. Beautiful. All right, folks.
Thank you.
So tomorrow, 12 to 1:30, we have our myeshiva.ca. If you, or actually we're on this Zoom right here, so you can come join us. 12 o'clock is Rabbi Mendy with the Parsha. 12:45, I'll be doing. It's a good question tomorrow. What I'll be doing.
That's good.
Well, Mondays I was hoping to do something Talmudic. But I don't know if I'll be able to do it tomorrow. It depends if, hopefully I'll be able to do it tomorrow. If not, then it might be Pirkei Avot. I'm not sure. Well, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, that's what we do. Monday will be hopefully Talmudic stuff, but I'm just waiting for something from New York that I can have the books that I need. So if I get that in time, so we can do that. All right. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Everybody. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you,
Have a
Rabbi.
good night. God bless you.
Amen. To you too, everybody. Be well. All the best. Be well.